welcome to those who have just joined. My name's Tom Wicksteed, and I'm really excited to welcome you to this webinar. This is a webinar that is explaining our Solicitor Apprenticeship Programme for 2022. So this is the third year that we have been, will have been running a Solicitor Apprenticeship Programme. We started off in 2020, and we've got some more solicitor apprentices starting next week. And yeah, it's been a fantastic program, and we've had some amazing apprentices join the firm in the last 2 years. And yeah, we're really looking forward to meeting some of you guys who are on the call and being able to answer some of your questions. So as I said, my name's Tom. I manage the early careers team. And the early careers team, we look after the apprenticeship program. So we look after the recruitment of it. So some of you we will meet on the recruitment during the recruitment process. And then when you join Mishcon, we look after the apprentices for the duration of the program, which for the solicitor apprentices is 6 years. Now, in terms of what I want to cover today, as I mentioned at the beginning, I want to answer as many questions as possible from you guys. So please put any questions in the question and answer panel. But what I want to cover is a quick intro about Mishcon. We'll go through the Solicitor Apprenticeship Programme. Lizzie is one of our fantastic apprentices who's already at Mishcon. So we'll let her tell you guys about her journey so far. And at the end, I want to give you some hints and tips for those of you who are thinking of applying. I'll talk about the process and some things to think about when you're planning and when you're carrying out those assessments. So let's start with a quick or brief history about Mishcon. Some of you may have already heard about Mishcon de Rare before. Some of you may have never heard of it before, which is absolutely fine. The name comes from this guy here, who is Victor de Mishcon, and he set up Mishcon de Rare back in 1937 in that tiny little building, the white building in the middle of that photo there, which is in Brixton. And what are we, 82 years later or something, 84 years later, James Libson is our managing partner, and we're in a slightly bigger office now called Africa House, which is in Holborn in the middle of London, for those of you who aren't aware of London so well. We also have some offices abroad, and I'll talk about those in a minute. I think Mishcon is probably most well known, or certainly in the industry, it's well known for taking on big cases, exciting cases, high profile cases. And certainly that is an attractive proposition for lots of budding solicitor apprentices and trainees. I guess one of the most famous cases in the past was this case. Some of you who avid watchers of The Crown will probably know that that's Princess Diana, and the gentleman next to her is someone called Anthony Julius, who is our chairman, and he represented Diana during her divorce with Prince Charles back in 1994. And then in 1996 there was another really interesting case where a Holocaust scholar called Deborah Libstadt. She was sued by a gentleman called David Irving, who was a Holocaust denier, and he took her to court for libel. And Mishcon de Rare represented Deborah Libstadt, defending her, and won the case. And they actually made that into a movie back in, I think it was 2017, 2018. I think it's on Netflix at the moment. So if you guys want to do a bit of research on Mishcon de Rare before you come to any assessment days, that's maybe something to watch. And maybe a bit closer to today, you probably recognise the gentleman on the right, Boris Johnson, and the woman to his left, or to the left, is someone called Gina Miller. Now, Gina Miller took the government to court on two occasions to do with Brexit. The first was around Article 50, and the second one was when in 2019 Boris Johnson tried to shut down Parliament, called prorogation of Parliament, and Gina Miller took him all the way up to the High Court to stop this happening. And it was in the press, it was in the news. Very exciting case that we represented Gina Miller and won that case. So that's just to give you three examples. But as a solicitor apprentice, you'll definitely be expected to get stuck into all of the cases that we are working on in the firm, including all of the exciting ones. And another thing that is a real attraction of Mishcon de Re is the breadth of legal departments that we have. So we are traditionally a litigation firm. So litigation is sometimes called dispute resolution. So if there's a dispute between two parties and it needs to be resolved in court, then you would then our litigation lawyers would represent you. And so we have a huge litigation department, but then we also have some departments that look after what's called transactional cases. So corporate and real estate, when you're dealing with businesses, this may be something like a merger or an acquisition of two companies, which doesn't mean going to court. It's just so negotiation and contracts that need to be created. Similar with real estate. We have a very large private department, so some wealthy clients. Included in the private department, we have a family team, so family lawyers dealing with any family issues or divorces. We have art law, which is very popular, so any wealthy individuals who are buying or selling art, we would support them with any of those transactions. We've got immigration there as well. Reputation is another really exciting team. So that's the private department. We've got employment, where we'd be dealing with employers and employees, helping them with any of their employment issues. And a recent department that was set up last year is the innovation department. And this is all about dealing with fast growing new sector clients. So often we're dealing with startups and entrepreneurs, and actually very, very hot off the press. We entered into what's called a strategic combination, a partnership with Taylor Vinters, which is another law firm. And together we've created a new company or a new division called MDR Taylor Vinters. And Taylor Vinters, as a law firm, works with entrepreneurs and works in the tech, the innovation space. So there's a real push at Mishcon for any of those of you out there who are interested in entrepreneurship and technology and startups. That is a really exciting part of the firm. And even though I showed you that picture of our office in Holborn in London, we also opened an office in Singapore last year. And very recently, a month ago, we have also entered into a partnership with a law firm in Hong Kong. So we'll be having a Hong Kong office, and hopefully our future solicitor apprentices and trainees will be able to go out to Singapore and Hong Kong for secondment. So that's a really exciting opportunity as well. So that was a very brief overview. I'm sure any of you who are applying to the Solicitor Apprenticeship Programme will be able to look at our website and do a bit more research. But just a bit about the programme itself. So I mentioned that it was a 6-year programme. I think apprenticeships is a fast growing. The reason I'm putting this slide up is because I want to show how quickly our apprenticeship programs have been growing in the last few years. We've actually done apprenticeships or had apprentices for, right back to 2016 and before. We started off, those black or dark grey boxes are the apprenticeships that we had in the business operations, so in HR and finance and marketing. But you can see the orange boxes are our solicitor apprenticeships. So those apprenticeships that allow people to become qualified solicitors. And in 2020, we had 5. Lizzie is one of those 5. Next week, we have another 8 joining. And for 2022, which is the intake that some of you will be applying for, we are offering up to 12 roles. So it's a really fast growing, exciting part of the firm. And yeah, everyone in the firm is really excited about the apprenticeship programme and fully behind it, and yeah, trying to give the apprentices as much support as possible. There are some of our amazing apprentices that are currently with us. When you join Mishcon pre-COVID, you'd have a kind of beautiful professional photo taken, but we haven't been in the office for so long, so we had to ask our apprentices to send in their own kind of mug shots. So some of them, I think Fazana, who's the second photo in, I think that's her passport photo where she's not allowed to smile, so it makes her look very serious, but they're an amazing, very cheerful, very enthusiastic group. And then the bottom row are some of the apprentices who are joining us next week. So it's a growing group, and we really encourage all the apprentices to support each other and socialize together and work together and help each other out. If you have any problems or not sure what to do, the idea is it's definitely kind of peer support. In terms of the program itself, the structure is that it is a 6-year contract. And during those 6 years, you will do a number of rotations, which are sometimes called seats. And those rotations will be between 6 and 12 months. So for the first 4 years, most of those rotations will be 12 months, so 1-year rotations. And then in the last 2 years, you join our graduate trainees and you do some 6-month rotations. And the idea is that you get the full breadth of the Mishcon department. So you'll get some time in litigation, you'll get some time in employment, you'll get some time in the innovation team, in the real estate. Yeah, you'll get that breadth of experience before you then decide what you want to focus on for the rest of your career. So it's an amazing opportunity to get to know all about different types of law, different aspects of the legal sector. One thing that I think is really, really, really important to mention is I don't know whether there are any parents listening on this webinar today, but I have spoken to parents before who say, oh, you know, I'm a bit worried about my child going down the apprenticeship route. I think they should go to university because that's the better way to become a lawyer. And I would definitely say at the end of your apprenticeship, you are a qualified solicitor and you are exactly the same as someone who's gone down the university route. It is not an easy route. It's not a kind of a second class lawyer in any way. You're exactly the same. By the end of the apprenticeship, you will have a degree, an LLB, which is basically a law degree, and you will have done the SQE, which is the solicitor qualification exams, which is exactly what you do if you went down the university route. So even though it's a different path, the end goal is you will be a qualified solicitor. So I think that's really important to emphasize. Now how do you get this degree when you're meant to be working? Well, what we'll do is we'll kind of split up your week, and you'd spend 4 days of your week working in one of the teams, and then 20%, so 1 day a week, you will be allocated, and we're very strict with this, and we want you to make sure that you don't answer any emails for that day. You just focus on your studies, and you'll be studying with the University of Law, who are a fantastic organization, and really, Lizzie can tell you a bit more about that later. As well as the 20%, we'll make sure that you have time off for any exams that you need to do, and we'll make sure we allocate some study leave for you guys to make sure you've got enough time to prepare for any exams. You also have a skills coach. So the University of Law will give you a coach, and that coach will help you with your studying and your support. And if you're falling behind or struggling or don't understand part of your course, you can go get in touch with your skills coach. So you've got lots of support on the studying side of things. And in terms of Mishcon, those 4 days where you're working in the team, we allocate buddies. So that will be one of the other more senior apprentices who have kind of been through it all before. They will be buddied up with you, and they can give you all their tips and advice about how to balance your kind of studying and your working. You've got all the other apprentices. We make sure that all of our apprentices, the solicitor apprentices and HR, finance, IT apprentices, all start together. so that you guys can be a team, a cohort, a group of peers who can help each other out. So there's lots of support at that level, at the apprenticeship level. We also allocate you guys a sponsor, which is a senior lawyer in the firm, and they will be your sponsor or your mentor for the entire 6 years. And you'll check in with them every few months, and they'll give you their kind of tips and advice on your kind of career progression. On a day-to-day basis, you'll all have a supervisor. So the supervisor will be telling you what to do on a day-to-day basis, what tasks you need to be working on, and they'll be reviewing your work. And then you've also got the early careers team, so my team, who are here from a kind of an HR point of view. So you've got loads of support. You're not kind of coming into this scary world of just being left alone. You're coming into this exciting world, and we're going to support you as much as we can over those 6 years. This slide, I just wanted to give you an idea of some of the different teams. We've got so many different teams in the firm, but these are the seats that our current apprentices are in. So you can see in private, we've got some apprentices in the family team, in the immigration team, in the private commercial litigation team, in the property team. We've got some in the innovation department looking after trademarks and brands. We've got 2 of our apprentices in what's called the practice transformation. So that is looking at all the future tech innovations, that's the legal tech that is, or the new startups in the legal world, and how we can incorporate those into Mishcon and our everyday practices. So I won't go through all of those, but it's just to give you a flavour. And you'll rotate round every year or 6 months, so you'll get a really broad range of experiences over those 6 years. And at this point, I'm going to hand over to Lizzie. So Lizzie has started with us last year in 2020. So Lizzie is just going into her 2nd year as an apprentice. But I'll let Lizzie, maybe if you could just tell everyone a little bit about like why you got into an apprenticeship and why Mishcon and how it's been.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I'm Lizzie. I've just done my 1st year. I was working in the immigration team, and they're within the private department. So I've just finished that, and then I'll be starting in the private commercial litigation team in a couple of weeks. I'll try and go through it chronologically in terms of how I got into it and how I found the application process, and then starting at the firm and sort of what I've been doing in this past year. So my sort of experience prior to Mishcon might be slightly different to a lot of people, because I wasn't a school leaver. I did start a degree straight from school about 5 years ago, and I left that in my 2nd year. It didn't really suit me, and I did a completely different subject that I wasn't keen on. So I sort of got the benefit of knowing what university is like and compare it to the apprenticeship. And sort of immediately I knew that the apprenticeship was far more suited to me. In between leaving university the first time and then applying for Mishcon, I had been working in a firm. I'd been doing sort of conveyancing work, sort of just a sort of assistant paralegal type role, and then in a family role, family department. So I'd got a bit of sort of legal knowledge, and then I decided I really wanted to qualify. But I didn't want to go back to uni at that point because I was used to working and I'd built up so many skills sort of through working, and I didn't want to sort of just drop that and then be at university. And then it was by chance that I saw the Mishcon apprenticeship, because when would it be now? Early 2020, so a year and a half ago. I didn't know anything about them, and I think they definitely aren't as common. And I just sort of applied to it on a whim. My application, I think we had sort of set questions that you had to answer, and obviously sent in a CV and things like that. And then we had an initial sort of video round where you didn't speak to anybody, and then you went to an assessment day. I'm not entirely sure if it's exactly the same now, but it did give you a lot of chance prior to any assessment days to sort of put as much about you in the application form and then even in the videos. And I think my top tip would be to just put as much as you can in there. But any sort of like volunteering, or if you do any roles at school, like tutoring, anything like that, just put anything in there and just sort of explain how you think that might be relevant. And literally any sort of experiences that you've got will be relevant and will work in your favour. And it just sort of adds to the picture of what you can bring to Mishcon. I think definitely don't be afraid to put your personality forward. Mishcon really want, sort of lively people with lots of different interests and backgrounds and things that they're passionate about. And I again, from day one, that I noticed that about the firm, that there's a lot of passionate people who work there who have such varied things that they work on, things that they're into, and so they're looking for that. And so if you could put your personality into application or just your video interviews and things like that, I think that would be really, really beneficial to your application. So then we had a sort of a assessment day where we did various different things, and then because I started during COVID, everything kind of went from 0 to 100 in terms of how we did the assessment day, got the job and started, because everything got delayed throughout the year. And then before I knew it, I was starting. I started remotely, and I didn't go into the office until April this year, I think. And I didn't even live in London until the end of Feb. So you would definitely have a completely different experience to me. But even from someone sitting at home and not being able to actually speak to anybody in real life, I actually had such a great experience joining. All of my apprentices, we all became really good friends really quickly. And then my team, who I worked with, all supportive. They do regular like group calls, sort of virtual socials, things like that. There was so much effort put into making sure that everybody got really comfortable joining and got to speak to as many people as possible. The elder people in my team, they really made an effort to sort of network for me in a way, and they've put me in touch with different people from different teams, or if there's smaller projects, my sponsor, she has let me work on them. And that's just allowed me to sort of really progress and just work on really interesting things. So yeah, my team was the immigration, and this year I've had a good mix of doing, proper legal work that the solicitors might be doing or the trainees might be doing. And then I've also done more of the admin side of things, like the paralegals will be helping with, or the PAs. So I feel like the apprentice role is definitely a hybrid between all of those aspects. So I feel quite well rounded, even just after 1 year. Sometimes, solicitors might come up, they might have dealt with the more boring things like the billing, but now I know how to do that. And I feel like going forward, it will help a lot of things. So it's a really good role that you get to do so much, and that you really can make the most out of it if you want to. I think sort of the effort that you put in definitely reaps back to you. So yeah, just always put your hand up to do anything, like most things, as you don't wish to have too much. But yeah, there's definitely always so many opportunities out there for people. What I'm doing going forward in my next year, I'm not entirely sure on now, but we actually did get a chance to sort of give our preferences to where we wanted to go, which I wasn't sure what we would do or not. I think I saw a question earlier sort of asking how many departments can we work in. So potentially I could be in 8, so I'll do 4 full 1 years, and then I'll do 4 more in the final 2 years where I do 6 months in each. And I have had a choice in the seat I'm going to next year. So if there's a particular area that you're interested in, there's definitely going to be opportunity for you to put that forward, and for the teams to be able to sort that out and allocate you into that team as well. I think that's kind of everything I wanted to go over without going into too much depth of just sort of what I do day to day. But yeah, in terms of the application process, hopefully that's covered most things.
If anyone on the call does have any questions specifically for Lizzie, or anything from what Lizzie has said that you want to ask about, please do put them into the Q&A button function. Lizzie, just while we wait for people to put any questions in for you, can you just talk a little bit about the studies at University of Law? and
Yeah.
how you like how often how it works with how much work you have to do and how you balance that and how you found
definitely. I've just seen a question that came in from that. I missed that big part of it.
That's all right, don't worry.
And I think because at the moment we've actually just had a very small break, and we've started a new module. So I've sort of, it's been off our radar slightly, but when we started in October, we worked full time until January, and then that's when we became enrolled with the university, and that's when we started. And since then, we've covered 2 modules, and you study only 1 module at a time. So it is definitely very manageable to do both at the same time. And you get 1 day a week, as Tom mentioned earlier. A lot of us took the Friday off, because then you get a sort of full stretch during the week. You can really have a productive week, get things sorted, and then you can just hand over to your team at the end. And also we have a hand in at the beginning of the week, so it works better to be able to make sure we've got enough time to work on that for the weekend. The way that the University of Law set their courses out, I found it really, really helpful, because I'd not been in education for a while. I was definitely out the swing of things. I was a bit nervous about sort of finding the motivation and just sort of remembering how to effectively revise and study, and I did worry about that. But because we have a weekly submission, there are certain weeks where you don't have a hand in, and it's usually sort of a shortest task, or you sort of consider something, submit something similar to an essay, but it is always within about 700 words. It's not something huge university sort of style essays every week, but that really does get you engaged. It does make sure that you're learning all the time and making notes and sort of applying your knowledge as well, rather than just reading something thinking, well, I've read that this week and I'm done. So I really, really found that to be beneficial to me as someone who's not been at school for a while. And then maybe even for people who have been at school for a while, you probably get to a stage where you have a bit of burnout, because I remember that's what happened to me when I started university, and that's probably why I struggled. But yeah, it's definitely manageable to have the 1 day and make the most of that day, and then sort of work the rest of the time, and then still have your weekends free. And yeah, definitely no pressure as an apprentice to be doing extra work on your study days. People are very, very considerate of that. There's been times where I've sort of put myself forward to, for example, recently there's a pro bono project that we're working on. So I mentioned to the trainee who's dealing with that, said, I don't mind doing an extra bit tomorrow. I'm on my study day. And they initially said yes. And I think that got fed back to someone else in the team. They said, no, this is your study day. You need to make sure that you're working. So even if you put yourself forward, most people will actually say, don't be silly, just make sure you're at home doing your revision as you should be. So people are really, really encouraging of you doing your studies, and no one's sort of dismissive of it. And just generally the attitude in the firm about the apprenticeship is really great, and everyone's so encouraging and supportive. So that really does help.
Lizzie, we've had a question saying, do you have to be really academic? Like how challenging is the work?
I mean, I think it definitely does require, sort of reading, and trying to make sure you're being sort of efficient, I think, in the way that you're learning. But the modules that I'm doing now, I know somebody who's actually doing the LLB, just the law standard degree at University of Law, and they've got the same module as I started with. So it is the same as that if you were doing any university course, but I think because you're doing it one at a time, it's a lot more manageable. And then also actually the way that the University of Law give you the content, it's different from when you're at school, because you're used to sort of having your textbooks and everything like you should know has to be in there, and it's there and it's sort of accessible. And that can be hard when you go to university, because you're sort of just given more free rein on what you read and what your sources are. But the University of Law, they do actually give you quite a lot of good resources, sort of like videos and transcripts from that, which I found really useful to work from, just to make sure that I wasn't missing an area from something, and I sort of covered everything that was important. But yeah, sort of going on what my subjects were at school, I did primarily science subjects, so I wasn't used to that sort of essay writing and reading, but I've sort of been able to pick it up. you're all going in at the sort of same level as if you were a school leaver, you've just done A-levels and things like that. So you'll probably build it up. But definitely it was manageable, even from me, who's not been at school for a while. I'd not done any sort of reading for ages, basically. So I found it okay. And I think as long as you're putting in, sort of the suggested amount of work that the university sort of guides you to be doing per week, then you'll be fine.
And Lizzie, one other question, just kind of linked to the studying, is obviously during COVID, everything's been remote, but do you know how it's going to work with the University of Law kind of going forward? Like, do you go into the campus sometimes, and some of it's like, what's the balance between the remote work and the?
Yeah, so most of it is remote, but I think that's sort of by nature of the apprenticeship, because they understand that not everybody's going to be on their study day, say on a Tuesday, and they're going to put a lecture in at 10 o'clock that you've got to get to. So everything is pretty much on demand. And I'm fairly certain it was more or less the same prior to COVID. What they have in the summer, they have summer schools, which is not specifically to do with the modules that we're doing, but it's more about the sort of solicitor side of things, of training you to sort of utilize your skills at work, things like time recording, just general things like that. They would usually be in person, but this year they were recorded, and they were last year as well. But things like that, they'll start being live. And then you can also book out spaces in their library. So if you want space to study, you can go there now, and that's back to normal. They've told us that that's back up and running as it was prior to COVID, so you can just go in whenever. And then also your meetings with your skills coach, they can be in person. But I think, I don't think it changed too much, because the resources had to be on demand, because they can't expect people to be available all at the same time. So the difference between the University of Law hasn't been too great. And also I think because they were already working on a sort of remote basis, they've actually had a really good way of teaching throughout COVID. Some people have been really badly affected at universities and things like that, where they didn't have a clue what they were doing, basically. But University of Law have definitely got their head screwed on with that, and everything's been pretty seamless. So that's been fine. Not really noticed any issues with that at all.
That's great. And just one last one on the kind of studying side of things, because a couple of people have said, is the study day enough, or do you find that you're studying in the evenings and weekends as well?
I do sometimes, but I think that's because of the temptation to do my work on the Friday, do all of the reading. What they do as well, actually, is you don't just have reading and an assignment. They have sort of self-assessed quizzes, activities. So there's lots of things to get you working on. And then also you get feedback on all of these as well, which is so useful. So I made like a sort of big bank of feedback and a sort of an index of where I could find a small definition of something. So that'd be one tip if once you like get started with that. But yeah, it's tempting to not submit your assignment on that study day, because you think, well, I might add something else to it prior to sort of after that. And then, on the Monday night before a Tuesday hand in, but I know for a fact we're all going to start proofreading our work and sort of checking it. So yeah, it depends. Some weeks there's a lot of content, some weeks there's not so much. Sometimes you will be working at the weekend as well. But if you, on the times where I know I'm like very busy that weekend or something like that, and I've set my day out like a working day, and I've been up like I'm going to work, I've tried to work through as much as possible and sort of really discipline myself with that. I've got everything done. So yeah, if you utilize your time well, you could definitely have such a good balance with it, and you don't need to worry about spending your whole weekend on it as well.
That's great. And Lizzie, just going kind of back to the work side of things, we've had a couple of people ask questions around like, what is maybe there's not a typical day in the life of an apprentice, but like what would you, like what can you remember a day last week or the week before? Like what would be a kind of typical
day? So the way I've worked with my supervisor is that we've worked sort of as a small knit team. So I have worked with a lot of other people in the team as well, but primarily I've worked with her. And then my other people in my cohort haven't worked so similar. So again, you'd have a different experience depending on what team you're on. But because I've been in a small knit group with my supervisor and her paralegal, every morning we'll have a catch up. It's not, to sort of be intrusive. It's just to make sure that we're speaking to someone every day, especially when we're all at home. And just have a quick chat, talk about what we're going to do today, what kind of things we've got on, and just a general catch up. So it's hasn't been so isolating for this past year or so. And then the types of tasks I'll be working on, I do a lot of sort of drafting of correspondence. So if we've got to send an email out to the client about something, maybe just like updates or a bit of advice or requesting documents or asking them to review something, I'll be dealing with that. And that's actually so useful because once you work in a law firm, you don't realise sort of the tone and the way that you correspond with people, but it is slightly different. So if you're writing an essay or an email to anybody else, so I'm really glad that I've had a lot of experience with that. And then in immigration, we do a lot of sort of applications, so like for visas, or for people applying for British citizenship. So I might be doing the draft application forms for that, doing a lot of the sort of like document management, reviewing the documents that the client has sent to us sort of in support of the application. So I'll be looking at bank statements or title deeds, anything like that, and just sort of assessing whether they'd be useful. I was given a lot of free rein with that and sort of to try and understand how to view the application sort of from a solicitor's perspective. And then I've done other bits of drafting as well, so of like more legal documents like letters of representations. And then when I've done more of the sort of like litigation side of things, I've done things like witness statements or taking notes at client meetings, and things like that. So I've had quite a varied role, but yeah, anything really from sort of drafting to then doing billing throughout the month. So yeah, so a real mixed bag really.
And then we've had a question linked to this about what's the favourite thing you've worked on?
I think recently I did a pro bono project, which is where you're sort of essentially working and not charging someone the fee. So we do a lot of that actually at Mishcon, and they really push that. And you have sort of like targets to meet certain hours of pro bono work and things like that. And what I've done recently was an appeal, and it was on a human rights basis. So that was going to a tribunal, so that was like a court hearing, and I was dealing with all of the bundling for that, drafting the witness statements, and I was really lucky that the managing associate and my supervisor did again give me a lot of responsibility within that, and they really trusted me to sort of take that on. And I really enjoyed that, and then we got a really good result from it sort of immediately, because our sort of case that we put forward was like really strong. So that was really, really exciting to have come full process with that, and it was like a really proud moment as well for all of us. But yeah, I've really enjoyed the pro bono projects because they're quite rewarding, and also they're quite varied. So you might work on something that you wouldn't necessarily work with your day-to-day clients. But it's definitely really interesting work. So yeah, the appeal that I've done recently is probably the highlight of this year for me.
Thanks, Lizzie. We've had a question about what the culture's like at Mishcon, and maybe along the same vein, someone's asked, do you feel like you can approach senior lawyers and partners? So maybe there's a link between those two.
Yeah, definitely. The culture at Mishcon is sort of very, my people say it, and I think people say this a lot in other places, but it's sort of a way of, it sounds a bit cringy, but people say, it's like kind of like a family, and I do understand that, and I think I sort of understood that from day one, sort of when I had my interviews and like the assessment days, and it just got a very nice sort of warm impression of people, and that was without even being in the office. But yeah, because everybody is so like positive as well and encouraging of my role, I felt really welcomed, and I felt so able to approach different people at all different levels, all different teams. Everybody's so lovely. If you give somebody from the IT team a call, I've always had really nice conversations with them. The people who work in security in the office, when they showed me around the office, that they were so lovely. Everyone's just really nice, and I think it's a really lovely culture where people are very motivated, and obviously very, successful and they do great things, but everybody's also really, really encouraging of everybody else and their own endeavours as well. And it's definitely, evident that people are helping each other up rather than trying to just stand out from the crowd on their own for sort of what they're doing and not really caring too much about other people, which you do get in a lot of places, especially in bigger firms, from to sort of like draw a comparison there. But I've found the atmosphere at Mishcon to just be really warm, and I don't feel intimidated or anything like that by the more senior lawyers. And I think that definitely has been helped by having a sponsor. So my sponsor was a partner in the immigration team, but I'll still be sort of partnered with her throughout. And she's had catch-ups with me every other week. When we're in the office, we obviously have chats and stuff a lot. And she's put me in touch with lots of other people. She's encouraged me to get involved with different projects. So it's been really, really handy to have her there. So yeah, I couldn't actually say anything better about the atmosphere at Mishcon. It's just been really great and welcoming ever since day one. So yeah, that's something I'm proud of for sort of like working there.
Thanks, Lizzie. I was going to finish there with the barrage of questions to you, but I've seen one come in and we always get asked this. We talked about the study hours. What about the work hours? How, kind of like the work-life balance when you're not in the study side of things?
So I think in immigration, there's sort of busy periods and there's quiet periods, and then sometimes you've got deadlines. So you've got a client who needs to travel on X day, or they can only be in the UK on X day, or things like that. And you have got time constraints to work towards. So there have been nights where I've worked later. But I mean, maybe like most of you here as well, you sort of anticipate that being part of the job, really. But there's definitely not a horrible sort of culture of, if you're the last one at your desk, that means you're working the hardest. It's never like that. If you've got things on in the evening, so for example, every Tuesday I do sort of like a charity work. So I always log off at 5:30, and that's fine. If I said I'm going out for dinner this evening with my friends, I'll just let my supervisor know, and in the morning, so that she's not going to give me a huge last minute urgent task, because she knows that I've got things to do. Everyone's got their own lives really, and is aware that other people do too. I think especially at our level, they don't want to make your experience difficult, and they don't want to give you burnout. So everybody's really considerate of that, and especially when you're in the office as well, you might be sort of hanging around, finishing a few bits off, and then one of the partners will leave and they'll go, "Why are you still here? Get home." So people are, very encouraging of having a good work-life balance. And now that we can do more things in person, there's more sort of socials and things like that. So people are encouraging of you spending time with your colleagues, but not in just the work setting, which has been so nice. In the past couple of months, I've really got to know people a lot better and made friends and things now. So yeah, I've really enjoyed having that social aspect at work. And everyone's always a lot of fun and really friendly. So you'll enjoy the sort of socials as well.
Oh, thanks so much, Lizzie. I'm conscious of time, so I won't ask you any more questions. But if we've got any time at the end, and any other questions come in, then maybe we can answer them then. I'm conscious that I've seen lots of questions come in about the application process. So I'll just try and cover off the last few slides to hopefully answer some of those. And then if not, I'll answer your questions at the end. So the application itself is made up of 3 stages. So there's an application form. I know someone said, is there like a covering letter? We don't need covering letters. It's just an application form, which you can find on our website. We look through all the application forms, and those that we want to take through to the next stage, we'll get in touch and we'll invite you to complete a recorded video interview. So this is where you're sent a link, and there will be about 4 questions that you will be asked, and then you record an answer. So it's not like a traditional interview. That will be at the assessment day. So those of you who progress through from that second stage, the video interview stage, will go through to the assessment day. And I've seen a few questions about the assessment day. What happens here is it will be I mean, it is the best part of a day. You'll have a chance to meet lots of people from the firm. You'll meet the early careers team. We'll try and make sure that you get to meet more of the apprentices. So you can ask more questions, but also we will want to get to know you a bit more. So there will be an interview, and there will be a few assessments as well. So we normally have a case study. The case study is where you are given a bit of information about a client or a company, and you're asked to read the case study and answer a few questions on it, and then you'll present your findings to an assessor who will be one of a Mishcon lawyer, and it is more of a discussion. They'll ask, like, what do you think about this situation and this company, and what would your recommendation be? And then they may say, well, why? And just, have a bit of a conversation. We ask candidates to complete other assessments. Sometimes that could be a prioritization test or a grammar test. And sometimes we may get candidates to complete some online assessments as well. So it'll be a mixture of a traditional interview where you get to, rather than the recorded one, you're meeting someone. It will be remote, so it will be on video, but you'll meet a lawyer and it'll be a conversation, and they'll ask you questions, and you'll get some assessments, and you'll get a chance to meet lots of people. So that's kind of the three processes. In terms of how to plan, we're often asked, like, what do I do? How do I do a good application form? How do I plan, prepare for interviews, etc.? So if we just focus on the application form, the number one thing I always say to candidates is just be yourself. The whole point of an application form is not for you to try and pretend to be some hotshot lawyer that you see in a movie. Like, it's just to tell us about you. That's all we're trying to understand, is like, what makes you tick? Like, we will ask you about your grades, we'll ask you about any work experience you've done, but we'll also ask you about, why do you want to be a lawyer? Why do you want to do an apprenticeship? We'll ask you about what other things are you interested in? What hobbies are you interested in? What other achievements have you done outside kind of your studies? And it's all just to tell us about you as a person. So don't try and be something you're not, because another thing is that application form will be used at the interview stage, because they'll look through and be like, oh, I see that you've been some like music producer and it sounds amazing, but then if you haven't, you can come a bit unstuck in the interview. So don't try and be something you're not, just be yourself, and you'll come across really well. The second thing is, tell us everything. Like, sometimes you see application forms and they're really thin, and like, people haven't written much, because often when we speak to people about this, they say, oh, well, I haven't done any legal work experience. I've just worked in, I don't know, local bar or McDonald's or something for the last few years. That's nothing to do with being a lawyer. But I always say to them, well, it really is. Like, working at McDonald's or working in a bar, you're dealing with customers, you're dealing with clients all the time. You're building up those communication skills that you need to be able to really effectively communicate with your clients. So we do want to hear about that. So tell us everything. Don't feel like there is something that is not irrelevant to being a lawyer, because it's probably not. And even if it's nothing to do with it being a lawyer, it tells us a bit more about you as a person, and that's what we're trying to focus on. So include all your achievements, all your work experience, even if you don't think they're relevant to the role. One other thing is, some people, it's really hard at 18 or 17 or 19 or however old some of you guys are to know exactly what you want to do with your career. But we are looking for people who genuinely do think that being a lawyer is what they want to do, because it's a 6-year apprenticeship. It's not something that you just dabble in. It's quite a commitment. So we are going to ask you, like, why law? Like, why do you want to be a lawyer? Why Mishcon? So you need to be able to convince yourself. If you don't really have a good enough answer to why you want to be a lawyer, then maybe that means that you don't want to be a lawyer, and maybe there's another amazing career that you could go down. So make sure you can convince yourself, and do your research. Like, research Mishcon. Don't just write a generic application form and copy and paste it onto 15 different application forms for 15 firms. Like, research the firms that you think you would like to work at. So if you like the sound of what Lizzie's been saying and you like the sound of Mishcon, do your research and tell us, like, really what is it about Mishcon that you're excited about working at our firm. And obviously spelling and grammar. it's a real killer if we see obvious typos. Like, just get someone to check it before you submit. Press that submit button. With the video interview, it's hard to really practice for these. They are a bit weird, but they're not curveball questions. They're pretty standard interview questions. So just start thinking about what questions you may be asked in interviews. You can go online and look for examples of interview questions and start thinking about your answer. Before you do the video interview, you may be a bit nervous, but just try to relax. We're not, it's not an interrogation at all. Again, it's just us trying to get to know you. So just take a few deep breaths, take your time, and go for it. And if you make a mistake, doesn't matter. Just say, oh, actually, I'm gonna start again with that bit. You're given an allocated time, but just if you make a mistake, just keep going. Don't worry about it too much. Just be yourself as much as you can. And then finally, on the assessment day, again, there's lots of different things, as I said, that will happen on that day. But we will be asking you about Mishcon, and we do expect people to know about the firm and, have a look at our website. Don't just look at the front page, look at the other pages, look at the About Us bit, because you want to learn more about Mishcon and see whether it is actually a firm that you would like to work at. Because if you hate what you read and hear, you probably don't want to work here. You probably want to work at another place. So do your research, and that will come across really well. There are some other websites, obviously Google. There's a website called Legal Cheek, which is kind of tailored to students, all about what's happening in the legal sector. And Chambers, if you type in Chambers students into Google, that will give you kind of a honest review of different firms. So if you put in Mishcon Dorata in that website, it will tell you a lot about, it's focused on the trainees, but it still gives you an idea of the culture of Mishcon. Have a look through your application form again. We'll try and remember what you wrote, because in the interview, you'll be asked about those things. So if you said you're into sport or music or charity or whatever you've done, that's the kind of things that you'll be asked about in the interview. So make sure you have another look through your application form. Think about what questions, if you were the interviewer, what would you ask yourself? And also, you're often given the chance to ask questions to the assessor. So think about what you would like to ask them. It may be something specific about the apprenticeship program, or it may just be asking a question saying, why did you get into law? But think about some questions that you would like to ask them. And when you've got the assessments, the number one thing is just read the instructions carefully, because sometimes it's time pressures and people don't read the instructions. They just go straight to the bulk of the information, and then they don't actually answer what we wanted them to answer. So read the instructions carefully, make sure you haven't missed anything before you dive into the detail, and try to stick to timings, because it is time pressured. Like, being a lawyer is about managing your time. And so during the assessment day, all those assessments will be timed. So stick to time, read the instructions carefully, and you probably will do a great job. So that's a quick run through of some of those stages. In terms of what we're looking for, we are looking for a number of things, and I'll just quickly go through them. We're looking for collaborative teamwork. So we want to see examples of where you've worked in a team. We want passion. That can be passionate about being a lawyer. Like, you've got to convince us that you genuinely do want to be a lawyer and commit to the 6 years. But also passionate about other things. Like, we want people who are interested in law and interested in sport and history and music and drama, or whatever else it is. Doesn't matter, traveling, whatever. And you can see down there, we've got proactive. People who are really successful at Mishcon are those who are proactive. They're passionate about something and they go and get it. And we want to see that demonstrated in your life. Like, I'm interested in music and I went out and did this, or I wanted to help the community and I went and worked at that charity. So what are you interested in, and what have you been doing to pursue those interests and those passions? Being aware, what we're saying there is, we just want people to kind of think about what's happening in the legal world. So maybe read the newspaper, see what's happening. Legal Cheek, that website I said before, is a really good resource to just get an idea of what legal firms are doing. So that if you're asked about a legal case that you've found interesting, or what you think the future of the law sector is, or how a law firm's changing. Maybe you've got something you can talk about there. And diligent is the bit about academics and you're hardworking, because we do need, it is hard work being a lawyer. We need to see that, and obviously good grades is great. Grades aren't everything. It's definitely the whole picture that we're looking at in the application form, but we just want to see evidence that you are diligent, you are a hard worker. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea, but we want a broad range of individuals from different backgrounds, with different interests, with different skill sets, all coming together to create this great group of apprentices. So hopefully that answers some of your questions. Finally, I've only got a couple of minutes left, but finally, in terms of the timeline, our applications opened on the 17th of September, so a few weeks ago, and today is the event. You have until the 15th of November to get your applications in, so another 5 weeks or so, 6 weeks. Don't leave it to the last minute. You've got half term, those of you at school, you've got half term coming up, to maybe make the most of that week. Get your application in. Once we've got the applications in, we'll start inviting people to the video interviews and the assessment days, which will take place in November, December and January. We won't put it in at Christmas or New Year, I promise, but it'll be over those kind of few months. And then we will be making offers at the end of January, and they will be to start next year. So we've got some apprentices starting next week, and then the next cohort, the next group, will be next October. So hopefully that gives you lots of information. I know there are lots of questions. I may just do in the last 30 seconds a quick fire answer of some questions I can see in the chat panel. So, is the scheme for state school only? No, it's for everyone. Anyone can apply. Are A-level resit candidates eligible? Yes, doesn't matter. Put down if you've done research, that's absolutely fine. How many spaces are there for apprenticeships? We've got 12 spaces, 12 roles for this year. How many applications selected? We've just done that one. Is the application process on a rolling basis? It's not a rolling basis. You've got till the 15th of November, and then we cut it off and we start looking through all the applications. So, but the sooner you get it in, the better. What else have we got? How many sister apprenticeships are there? We've answered that. Look at the bottom, see if any new questions. Is the assessment day virtual? Yes, it will be. How many people apply each year? Well, last year we had 600 people applied. So it is quite competitive. So definitely that's why doing your research and doing a really good application form and telling us everything will make you stand out. Are the offers given conditional? They will be based on, your predicted grades. Well, obviously going to be flexible. If you said you were going to get, I don't know, 3 Bs and you got 2 Bs and a C, then we'll obviously have a chat with you. But if you said you predicted 3 Bs and you got 3 Es, then we may have to kind of reconsider. But they are conditional. What happens if you underachieve in your A-levels? Hopefully I've asked for that. Is it paid? Very good question. Yes, you are. That's the great thing about going down an apprenticeship route rather than university. You are paid for from day one all the way through. You don't have to pay for any of your studying. That's all included. I think someone said you have to apply for the University of Law separately. We sort all that out for you. So you just turn up on day one and we sort out all of your academic stuff. And yes, you are paid. The starting salary hasn't been confirmed, but it's normally in the early 20s, so around 21,000 starting salary. Does it matter how early you apply? It doesn't, but it helps. Is the assessment day virtual? All of it is virtual. What kind of things?
So a few people asking if I work from home. I don't think I made that clear.
Yeah, go for it, Lizzie.
I'm at home now, but that's just because I'm on annual leave at the moment, so I've not been in the office. But I do a mixture, and that's the same for most people at the moment. Most people do in some days, out some days. It's very flexible. I think that's quite an important part. So sorry, I forgot that earlier.
No, that's fine. Look, I'm very conscious of time, and it's 1 minute past 5, and we said we finish at 5. So what I'm going to say is that this has been recorded and it's being put onto our website. So if there's anything that you missed, feel free. In a few days' time, this will be on the website and you can go back and rewatch it. If you go to our FAQ section on the Solicitor Apprenticeship page, hopefully that will answer some of your questions. If you have any other questions, always feel free to get in touch with the Early Careers team. The email address is on the website, but it's early.careers@mishcon.com. Very welcome to get in touch about anything. But I hope it's been helpful. I hope we've answered as many questions as we could in the time. And I really hope that we see some of you guys applying for the apprenticeship role, and maybe see you at the assessment day. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Lizzie. And yeah, have a good rest of the day and have a good evening, everyone.